Chapters 16 through 20 of Invisible Man, we have the topic of theme, thesis, and values of culture. Our first point will revolve around how the narrator begins to define himself in new ways through the Brotherhood. In addition, we will lightly touch nationalism and its implementations within the novel. Our second point will pretty much just revolve around Ellison's degree of wanting us to elicit emotional responses to the events that occur within the novel. Then we're going to wrap it up with our third point of how applicable the potential thesis is to us, the readers, and its organization within the novel. Then we're also going to talk about how the novel makes us sympathize or empathize with the narrator. And with that said, we're going to go right into our first point with John.
For our topic, another question that we had was, what are the themes and how do they relate to the chapters? Well, one theme we discussed was invisibility and finding yourself after being invisible. The narrator is starting to define himself with the Brotherhood as he's changing to the point where his newfound identity couldn't recognize his own body in his new suit and shoes. The narrator likes his new self because in a way he no longer feels confined by his race. He feels entitled in the position that he holds in the Brotherhood, and he identifies himself as being the voice of the movement, or one of the voices. Another theme we discussed was nationalism and how it was implemented into the story through Roz the Exhorter and his movement promoting the rise of African Americans without the help of whites. In the eyes of Roz, the Brotherhood is made up of a bunch of traitors to the race.
Whoa, don't sync up on me like that. My question was, to what degree does Ellison want to elicit emotional responses from us and choose a specific scene from it? A scene I choose is when the narrator sees the black Sambo doll and his initial reaction is like he feels betrayed by Clifton, but then later he stomps on it and then he keeps on stomping on it until some policeman arrives and then he puts it in his briefcase. And to me, that's like Ellison speaking out, saying that he wants racism to end no matter where it's at. But unfortunately, because of the society that they are in, they are forced to live under it, under the law, and that's it.
Okay, our first question was, is the book organized so that it presents a thesis that is applicable to our world today? Well, I think the answer is yes, because the book is obviously organized towards a common theme, which we all know is identity and invisibility and like the search for yourself. The thesis could be that in a world full of so many differing cultural values, it is difficult for people to feel like they have a voice, but at the same time, when you gain a voice, like the Invisible Man, it can be really strong and influential. So I would say yes, because people feel invisible, and I think that the goal of the novel is to get us to either sympathize or empathize with the Invisible Man. But at the same time, we don't suffer the same types of boundaries and cultural influences that he does with the racism and with the North and South barriers and things like that. We have a much more equal society, but I still think that there is invisibility that we suffer from. So in that case, it is applicable to our time now.
With that said, one small overarching theme that appeared in these chapters that I would like to talk about for a second is related to these ideas is that of internalized racism. This theme is shown by the unnecessary hatred and violence between the Brotherhood and Ross's group, which both aim to advance African American society, but cannot seem to agree on certain ideals. This ties into what John said about nationalism and how Ross believed that members of the Brotherhood were traitors to their race. An example of this would be, as Paul said, the Sambo doll and how it portrayed the Invisible Man's race so poorly, yet it was being sold by one of his own race. Lastly, to connect this all together, The themes presented in these chapters, as Brittany said, are all still here today and give us context to better understand the Invisible Man.